Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Long Island.
Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of Long Island, who I have the pleasure and privilege of serving in this place. Madam Speaker, I want to also pay my respect to Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield and Sir Lyndon Finley, and wish them also a heavenly happy birthday. These two men were foremost in the Bahamas' move towards independence and in the Bahamas' achievement of much of what we see today. They were the builders, the architects of the modern day Bahamas. Madam Speaker, I want to begin by extending condolences also to the family of catechist Oral Bow, to his wife, his daughter, Nurse Opal Bow Knowles, and her siblings, to his brother, Mr. Albert Bow, and his wife, Laverne Bow, and to his sister, Ms. Deborah Major, and to his wider family. Madam Speaker, this weekend in Long Island, we are having the Mutton Fest, and I know that Islanders will have an opportunity for the first time in a while to have some new monies coming into the local economy. And so we're looking forward to that event on the island. Madam Speaker, I also want to wish a happy birthday to Mrs. Rosemary Adderley, who celebrated, I know she don't want me to say her age, but she's getting this, celebrated yesterday. I want to wish her a happy birthday, and I hope that she would live to enjoy many more. Madam Speaker, I have previously raised an issue here with respect to one of my constituents, and that concerns, I had maybe on three occasions already, spoke to the plight of Miss Knowles, Joan Knowles, who was the center manager for urban renewal in Long Island. So far, she's not gotten the funds, even though the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini has nodded to me and indicated to me previously that she would be, those funds would be paid to her. Now, my understanding is that she, upon her departure from office, that she was to be paid a gratuity of 15% of her salary. It's been more than a year since she was unceremoniously sent home, but she has not been paid out the funds owed to her pursuant to this contract. And so I think it's important that people like Ms. Knowles and others who haven't yet been paid funds owed to them would be able to get their funds that they have worked for, and I believe that they have earned, and that is much needed for whatever their personal reasons might be. Madam Speaker, I want to indicate here that I too support this bill. One of the first persons that introduced me to alternative dispute resolution was a lady by the name of Ms. Ruby Nottage, Justice Ruby Nottage, classy lady, a former lecturer of mine, myself and a member for Marathon, lovely lady. She's one of the foremost experts in alternative dispute resolution, which I'll call ADR. And she was one of those persons who imparted so much in terms of the principles of ADR in resolving disputes, etc. Also, Dr. Peter Maynard, he was another. So, much like the member for East Grand Bahama, I too had concerns with reference to, where Bahamians would fall in such a piece of legislation because, it's key that Bahamians are first and foremost, qualified Bahamians that is, such as Ms. Nottage and Dr. Maynard, in being advanced for resolution of disputes. I think it's important that we ensure that as we enact this piece of legislation, Bahamians are first priority, because we know, just like folks are bought into head big private banks and other entities. Folks can be brought in to sit down as arbitrators and mediators. And so we want to be careful to ensure that Bahamians have first preference as it relates to the practice of alternative dispute resolution in the Bahamas. Again, like the member for East Grand Bahama, I too share the view that the Bahamas should be deemed or should become the arbitration center. This should be the hub. The Bahamas should be the space in which any disputes, whether it's business or otherwise, is settled. I believe that this piece of legislation would deepen the synergy between tourism, financial services, and law. You know, the Halsbury laws of England describes alternative resolution, dispute resolution in this way. It defines it as a process by which a dispute or difference between two or more parties as to their mutual rights and liabilities is referred to and determined judicially and with binding effect by the application of law by one or more persons instead of by a court of law. Madam Speaker, ADR is becoming the preferred choice for the resolution of conflicts and disagreements. We all know that litigation is costly, it's lengthy, you know, it lends to a public exhibition of differences, and many times it produces or it causes ill will between litigants. And so I believe this is an arena that could foster a faster, less expensive, less time consuming, and that is more, perhaps even more conclusive and not as protracted as litigation. Madam Speaker, I see the merits in utilizing a multi-pronged approach to dispute resolution, endorsing and employing many of the methods set out in the increasingly popular alternative dispute resolution spectrum. I've always held the view, Madam Speaker, ever since I was introduced to ADR by Justice Ruby Norwich, that the ADR guidelines could assist in alleviating much of the backlogs that we see. Lord Wolfe, the English judge, Lord Wolfe, who praised the conception of ADR, stated that litigation should be avoided wherever possible. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that ADR fosters a better management of disputes and usually quickly and efficiently resolves the disputes without people losing relationships via litigation. So we avoid the traditional legal proceedings and the risk of an unpredictable outcome. Madam Speaker, beyond the principles of ADR that I just spoke to, you know, I believe that in the Bahamas, as we move forward, we should seek to see a greater application of alternative dispute resolution in other substantive areas. You know, we see it in labor law, but family law as well. ADR, applying it in family law, applying it in environmental law, commercial law, public law, and even criminal law, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, as I read the seminal works of Dr. Albert Fiajo as it relates to alternative dispute resolution, you know, one of the things he stated was that the moral, ethical standards of conduct that are pertinent to the mediation and arbitration process, coupled with the level of procedural fairness and absolute confidentiality, would be of prime importance to the support and execution of alternative dispute resolution. So there's substantial benefit, you know, with respect to saving legal fees, and like I said, not jeopardizing family and friendship ties or putting at risk the entire framework of a potentially lucrative business venture during a bitter court battle. Madam Speaker, an aspect of this alternative dispute resolution spectrum, I believe, is the Ombudsman. You know, we've had much talk about the Ombudsman over the years. And the Ombudsman could serve as a mediator and conciliator in certain instances. I have always believed that the institution of the Ombudsman ought to be a critical focal point of enabling the ordinary citizen to have some affinity to the Constitution and to enjoy the benefits of constitutional protection. The Ombudsman will take a pivotal role, I believe. I think this is one of the reforms that we must look at. The Office of the Ombudsman has become a part of the legal systems of the United Kingdom, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Dominica, Ghana, Namibia, and many other countries, and it's been so for quite a long time. These days, we note that the average Bahamian, and this is true, the average Bahamian, especially one who does not have a couple of dollars, or don't have somebody who they could borrow it from, but the average Bahamian does not have access to justice, or simply cannot afford lengthy litigation. You know, an ombudsman or the ADR process comes without the normal trappings of the judicial process or the cost attended thereto. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that an ombudsman is able to bring an adjudicatory process, that is somewhat informal and simple between parties of unequal size and resources. I see an ombudsman as an alternative or supplement to the court system. An alternative dispute, that too can be an alternative dispute mechanism. Madam Speaker, in Jamaica, for example, most jurisdictions have one ombudsman, particularly in the Caribbean, but in Jamaica, there's three. And, you know, when you talk about the spheres of responsibility, you have a utilities ombudsman in Jamaica. Here again, this is the person who settles disputes via alternative means. So the utilities ombudsman in Jamaica deals with public utility issues, such as intervening in disputes relating to utility companies, excessive bills, incorrect billing, defective meters, disconnections, unavailability of services, inadequate street lighting, illegal telephone calls, estimated bills, lost luggage. And then you have a political ombudsman who deals with all political matters and settles political disputes between parties, for example. And then, of course, there's a parliamentary ombudsman who deals with matters concerning government and statutory agencies. And I believe, therefore I believe, Madam Speaker, that creating this role of ombudsman would lend to greater efficiency in the government sector in particular. You know, some of the benefits speak to the need, or we will see the resolution, quicker resolution, I believe, in issues concerning disputes between an individual and the state, and avoid some of the inordinate delays that we see. The need to have the ombudsman should also be, or this ombudsman should also be vested with the power to refer cases for mediation or other alternative dispute resolution processes. I think where you have an absence of legal aid for small or some civil cases, right, this too undergirds the argument for the creation of an ombudsman, because there are persons who simply can't afford to be a part of such cases. They don't have the funding. And then you have the absence of a human rights, and the absence of a human rights commission, or where you want to strengthen it. I think it's a strong argument for the creation of the office of an ombudsman here again, as relates to human rights. And then again, for the enhancement of the jurisdiction, or for that is of the ombudsman, or the creation of the jurisdiction of ombudsman, where such a person would have an inquisitorial style that is not the same as, say, a court. You understand? Can look into other issues, other matters that don't necessarily have to rise to the level of going to a court. Madam Speaker, let me speak about ADR. I read about small claims court, and there's some who say, okay, that's what the magistrate court is for. No, I'm not referring to the magistrate court. You know, there's seminal works that speak to small claims courts and refer to it as distinguishable from the regular magistrate courts, where small claims, which constitute the vast majority of the cases you see anyhow, that pass through the litigation system, these small claims can be ventilated another place, rather than clogging the system where, you know, you may have larger, more commercial issues having to be heard. So a small claims court, I believe, should not be bound by any of the rules of procedure except for those of fair play and common sense. Could be manned by lay persons. It's a jurisdiction that could cover, let's say, debt collection or petty civil claims and consumer matters. And the hearings can be informal, and strict rules of evidence don't necessarily have to apply. See, the role of a person, an arbiter or a magistrate in a small claims court could be clearly distinguished to that of a regular magistrate. And so, Madam Speaker, I do support this bill. I do have my views as to how the bill could be perhaps bettered, but I also believe that there are other avenues to explore as relates to alternative dispute resolution and to the resolution of small court claims, small civil claims. And I think the Office of an Ombudsman will be pivotal to resolving disputes between the state and individuals. So, Madam Speaker, on that note, I rest and I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member.